Hello, this is our presentation on the software design technique of CRC cards. In our group we have Tyson Thornton, Bradley Dawson, Benjamin Hansen, Jake Batson, and Benjamin White. The CRC in CRC cards stands for Class, Responsibilities, and Collaboration, or Collaborator. It is based on the elicitation technique of card sorting. The main focus with CRC cards is figuring out the objects that will be created in an object-oriented software program. They are best used during the analysis and design phase while classes are still being discovered. CRC cards are typically written on 4x6 index cards and are set up into three sections, all of which represent objects: the class name, the responsibilities, and the collaborators. The class represents a collection of similar objects which include a person, place, thing, event, concept, screen, or a report, all of which are relevant to the program. The responsibilities usually include the class's attributes and methods, which represent what the class knows or does. It is common for a class needing to complete a responsibility but not having enough information to do it. This is why the collaboration section is important. The collaborators are different classes that a class interacts with to fulfill its responsibilities. A CRC session starts off with a member of the team walking through the program and talking about how a card, which represents a class, interacts with another card. What if situations are often presented to help cover all the potential uses and interactions of the classes. The cards are then moved around and objects that collaborate with one another are set closer to each other. Through doing this, any weaknesses or problems can easily be identified. This allows for the design team to brainstorm alternative solutions and resolve any potential problems before any code has actually been written.
So to demonstrate the CRC card design elicitation technique, we did it in a group. This article I reference says an effective way to create CRC cards is to brainstorm in person a scenario, to have someone role play that scenario and the others record notes related, noting the nouns and the verbs related to the scenario, what the user will encounter as they use this product. So we met in a group and had someone in the group act as if they're the coder downloading the game for the first time and opening up to play the first level. And we recorded the nouns and verbs that he said he thought he would encounter and came up with some actions that the coder will need to do. They're going to need to move and interact with the objects. They're going to need to solve challenges. And as soon as we thought of that, we thought of, oh, we're going to need to define what a challenge is and what the challenges will do. And so we created a whole new card for that. Those responsibilities are the action verbs, and the collaborators are the nouns that we reference for the given noun. And so we went through and created some cards that you can see here. This will help us in coming up with a good design for our program. Something useful to note is that the CRC card technique is best to be done with actual physical cards. But because we were meeting online because of COVID-19 and this online class, we thought it easier to create an online version. And this is the beginnings of creating a UML diagram for our object-oriented system. It looks like a UML diagram, but it's actually not the UML diagram, just the precedings of it.
My name's Ben White, and I'm working on the continued part of the demonstration that Benjamin Hansen built off of. I added the boss section in the first slide because we thought it made sense to have a class describing the bosses. And here we're going through the multiplayer classes with a coder, player versus player, a player versus player arena, and a player versus player lobby, which allows for the players to connect. We go through the responsibilities and the collaborations of each one in detail in the slides.
CRC cards definitely have a lot of upsides. The first one that stands out is how good it is for designing object-oriented systems at a high level, and hopefully that's clear why after you've seen what a CRC card is and seeing a few examples from before. CRC cards can really be seen as a preliminary to class diagrams, with classes mapping to classes, responsibilities mapping to functions, and collaborators helping to determine how objects and classes interact with each other. CRC cards are also simple, cheap, and straightforward. From the examples in the previous slides, CRC cards are a fairly simple concept, easy to grasp, and can be picked up by anyone really quickly. Since CRC cards are also supposed to be a collaborative effort, it's also great at bridging the communication gap between the developers and stakeholders so everyone can be on the same page. One of the big downsides of CRC cards is they are inefficient for large systems. Since you need a card for a whole bunch of different things, you may not want to be carrying around 500 index cards in your pocket. It also gives limited details. It's great for initial design and prototyping, but you will definitely want something more specific as you iterate further into the design process. Another downside is the difficulty of getting a group of everyone together, since you will want developers and stakeholders working together to work on the CRC cards. This is similar to the downsides of several other methods that involve large groups of individuals. Despite the downsides, CRC cards are still a great option for the initial phase of the design process.
So now our recommendations on when to use CRC cards. So first and foremost, you only want to use CRC cards if you're going to be writing object-oriented software. This is because the CRC cards are used to represent classes in an object-oriented design. So if you're not going to be using classes, then really CRC cards aren't going to help you much in creating your design. You also want to use them when you're solidifying the main definitions of your classes and also their relationships and how they interact. The CRC cards will make it a lot easier to determine how to set up the relationships between these classes, and will also make it very clear if there are any problems with the relationships you come up with. You should also ideally use CRC cards before more specific details about classes, about their properties, are decided. This is because once you get to that point, you should already have an idea of the relationships you want to use. But if you are at a point where you have more specific details done, you can use CRC cards to at least look for some flaws in your design. Having them all laid out and then going through it all can really make it much more obvious if there is some inefficiency, or if you're using them and if you're using your classes in a way that could be improved. And then lastly, you can use CRC cards to help everyone involved to better understand how the software is set up. It gives a great visual representation, similar to a UML diagram. And that way, everyone will understand how all the classes in the software are related to each other and how they work together. And so these are the best times that you should really be using CRC cards.